whenever studios come out and defend gamers by saying they want to make titles that people are going to enjoy and they don't want to shove political messages in your faces to try to earn a few pandering points, the mainstream media melts down. They freak out over the fact that these studios are not listening to them and catering to their demands. And now the same exact thing is happening with the Lords of the Fallen studio after they said that they were not going to be chasing DEI. I have a few different things to show off, but before I get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, join the community in my live streams, and consider supporting through Patreon or YouTube memberships. Now, I completely understand why studios would not want to go the route of pushing DEI initiatives. First of all, gamers are boycotting a lot of titles like that, but second of all, it ends up putting you in a very risky position because you are sacrificing high quality storytelling and focusing on gameplay because you want to hire a few people who will check off a few boxes on your checklist, or you're adding characters to your games that do the same things, and gamers react negatively to that. I don't want to deal with Tasha's in my game where she just walks around and constantly talks about her identity and her sexuality and what pronouns you need to refer to her or they or he or she as. I think that that is absurd. I don't want to play games like Veilguard that have pronouns, who have top surgery scar toggles, games that have modern terminology like transgender, non-binary. If we were talking about a cyberpunk, that would be one thing, but when we're talking about fantasy games with dragons and bards, I think it's absurd, and a lot of other people do too. And now that the Lords of the Fallen studio has come out and said that they will not embrace DEI and they are not focused on, chasing the pandering points, the media is freaking out, specifically TheGamer and, of course, PCGamer. I think it's funny how these sites that have gamer in their names are the most out of touch with gamers. They don't understand what our criticisms are, and they always have just the complete opposite opinions. But they said Lords of the Fallen Studio, CI Games, say they will not integrate any social or political agendas into its games because doing so, it claims, incurs a high risk of commercial failure. It is true. Look at 2024 and 2023. Just those 2 years alone, you had Alan Wake 2, which was a complete bomb. Then going into 2024, you had Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, lost over $200 million. Concord, which lost apparently over $500 million. Insane. You had a lot of AA games like Flintlock, The Siege of Dawn, and Unknown Nine Awakening. You had games like Dragon Age the Veilguard and Star Wars Outlaws, titles that for all intents and purposes should have been pretty big releases, but they were not because, yes, studios are focused more on making games that ultimately shove a narrative in gamers' faces, and that is not what is selling. And it's okay to admit that. It is okay to say this is not a strategy that's working out for us. The statement was made during a recent investors chat, during which CI Games was asked about its stance on DEI in gaming. In response, the global marketing director Ryan Hill said the studio prioritizes excellent user experience with compelling thematic and characters created specifically for core and adjacent audiences. While some video games have recently taken the opportunity to embed social or political agendas within their experiences, it is clear that many players do not appreciate this, and as a result, we have seen a number of high-profile releases underperforming commercially during the last year alone, which certainly is the case. And he didn't explain exactly how he or CI Games defines DEI, they go on to mention, which has become shorthand slang for things I don't like among some parts of video game fandom, nor did he offer any examples of games that failed due to their social or political agendas. They go on to talk about how there are some games that failed to find an audience over the past year. And in the case of Concord in particular, it arguably just wasn't a great game. We gave it a 45% in our review, and not because we didn't think the cast was white enough. Nobody has said the cast was not white enough. People had said that the cast was like the Saints Row reboot, where you have cringeworthy characters who look like they're drinking soy lattes over at Starbucks every day. I mean, in the Saints Row reboot, you had characters committing crimes so they could pay off student debts. That's the way that Concord came across. A Guardians of the Galaxy knockoff made for modern audiences. And I have to say this all the time, the modern audiences could have shown up to support this game, but they didn't, because this fictitious modern audience is not going to buy video games because they don't exist. So PC Gamer's just chalking it up to, oh, you guys are racists because the cast wasn't white enough, and so you're saying it's got DEI. It most certainly had DEI, but TheGamer is also talking about this, saying, CI Games, the publisher behind Lords of the Fallen, has stated it won't be including DEI elements into their titles. Instead, they will continue to focus on games created specifically for core and adjacent audiences. As the first Gamergate proved all the way back in 2014, the inclusion of diversity in video games can be very controversial for a specific crowd. I have absolutely no problems with diversity and inclusion when it is done naturally, when it is done because the developers felt that this was the best direction for the characters they imagined. I think that that is perfectly fine. It is great to see all different types of people, whether it's their skin color or their sexuality or their cultures represented on a screen. I just do not want it being done so that corporations can score a few ESG points so they can get more investor funding. That is the problem I have with DEI in the modern day, plain and simple. I think that it's great to represent all different types of people, but companies are not doing it naturally. They're forcing it so they can get more dollars. But while most see it for the positive movement that it is in the move to make games for everyone, there are always going to be those who very vocally oppose it, something that we saw in full effect in 2024 with Sweet Baby Inc., Concord, and a whole lot more. You mean gamers speaking up about the things they feel passionately about, or they are upset about. Yes, gamers are allowed to speak with their wallets. They are allowed to boycott games. They're allowed to ignore games. They're allowed to point and laugh at games that they do not like, because at the end of the day, you have social media, I have social media, people have social media, and they can say, oh, I don't like the look of this game, or, oh, I think the direction you're headed in is really bad. It's not because we're racists or sexists that these games are failing. It's that these companies have been very vocal, and they have said, oh, you are not welcome in our community, and so we say, sayonara, bitches. We're not going to monetarily support you anymore. Like, what do these outlets not understand? What do these activists not understand? We're not racists. We just want high quality products. And with the inclusion of forced DEI in video games, we end up getting a lesser quality experience. You can support it all you want. I am allowed to not support it all I want, but the activists in the industry feel that their opinions are the correct opinions, and anybody who goes against them are racists or sexists or homophobes, which of course is disgusting, but not particularly shocking at this point. So yes, CI Games is saying they will not integrate social and political elements into their games because it does hurt sales. And at the end of the day, companies should want to make money. And by listening to your customers, you're going to make money. So they're just doing what will make their business successful, not really crazy to understand. But of course, the media is very, very angry that they are not bending the knee to political correctness and pandering. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to give it a like, and if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I'll talk to you all again in the next video really soon.